Hello and welcome to Property Money Trees Maximising Property Values, the once a month show where I break down the steps of how to recognise, enhance and then extract the values in property in order to create wealth. Would you like to find out how you can benefit from the steps of maximising property values? This is even if you don't own a property yet or have a deposit. If that's a yes, then you're in the right place to find out. My name is Patricia Faber, and although many know me for my work as a solicitor, on this show you will be getting the benefit of my 30 plus years worth of experience of maximising property values, experience which has given me a net worth in millions. So who might benefit from listening to this show? Literally anyone with an interest in creating property wealth. Welcome back. This month, I want to talk about the importance of getting professional advice and also of making sure that your figures are robust. So one of the recent purchases that I made this year in 2022 was a short lease flat. 60 odd years, can't actually remember exactly how many, but that's not really important at the moment. The freeholder, or there are three superior landlords. So there's the freeholder, then there's a superior landlord, and then there's yet another landlord called the property management company. So three landlords, and then there's the leasehold interest, the person who's actually going to be living there. So there we've got three landlords, so one like the main landlord and two intermediate lessors or landlords. Right, so that made it complicated in working out how much the lease extension premium was actually going to be, or what it was likely to be. So now I could have just gone online and used various calculators and come to a figure. But no, what I actually did was I employed a surveyor, an MRICS, so a Master's Chartered Surveyor, to work out the figures for me before exchange, mainly because of the two intermediate landlords that were in the picture. Anyway, so the surveyor came back to me and said, this is what you are, likely to have to pay. So for the bottom landlord, £1,495. For the middle landlord, £6,637, and for the top landlord, the freeholder, £20,800. Now, those figures, he said, he used those for negotiation, but worst case scenario, you might be looking at 1,495, 6,637, so those didn't change. And then for the main freeholder, £21,722. So adding all three of those up, it came to £28,932. And I thought, yeah, that's completely okay, not a problem. When the notice was drafted, because I did this because I do have the knowledge and experience, and being a solicitor, albeit a non-practicing solicitor, I felt competent to draft and serve the notice. And the notice went in with the following figures. So for the bottom landlord, £780. For the middle landlord, £2,300. And for the freeholder, £15,780. So those were going to be my starting negotiating figures. So altogether, that came to £18,860. Right. Now, when the freeholder served their counter notice, their section 45 notice, they came back with these figures. So for the bottom landlord, £12,967. For the middle landlord, £20,681. And for the freeholder, £56,231. Altogether making £89,879. Now, there's no way that I'm paying them that. So, but there's such a big difference between what my surveyor said and what they've come back with. Now, I have no intention of suing my surveyor, but when he advised me and I relied on that advice, if his advice was incorrect, then he legally would have the obligation to make good his bad advice. But, we're not going to get there. But this is going to motivate him to negotiate on my behalf to bring the landlord's figures a lot closer to his figures. And that is why, honestly, everyone should always get professional advice. When you're doing anything, get professional advice from a professional who has got professional indemnity insurance. Now, this surveyor, if he has to make good, which it's not going to come to that, he won't have to dip his hand into his own pocket to pay. He has insurance, and his insurance would then step in. Anyway, no more of that. So how do they actually work out these figures? And I thought I'd do a little bit of a short leases masterclass here, so that people don't just think, oh yes, there's lots of money in short leases, I'm going to go and do it. It's it sounds really exciting. It is really exciting, and you will make money. There's no way that you won't make money from short leases. It's just the way that they're actually set up. The only proviso to this is that you don't overpay when you're buying. If you overpay when you're buying, yes, you can and probably will lose money. And I've already done a podcast on someone who has lost money on the short lease strategy. But if you do your due diligence and you work out your numbers, there's no way that you can lose money buying a short lease. There will always be an amount baked in, and this amount really is the other half of the marriage value, which I will be talking about later on, because half of it goes to the landlord or landlords and the other half is yours to keep. The premium consists of 3 amounts. One, your ground rent. So say you've got to pay ground rent of £100 for, let's say, another 60 years. There's a figure which is used in the calculation, and it's called the yield. So if, say, for instance, the yield is 6%, what you do is you take that £100, so it's £100 today, and then next year it's £100 less 6%, and then for year 3 it's £100 less again 6%. So that's the way it's done all the way to the end of the lease, and that gives you the value of the rent that the freeholder is going to be losing. So let's call that figure A. That's the rent. Then you've got the value of the reversion, which is in, let's say the lease only has, let's say, 50 years to run. That means that in 50 years' time, the freeholder will own that flat. So you look at the value today as if it was the freehold value of the flat, which is more or less very, very similar to an extended lease value. And then you say, right, the reversion rate, which has been, done in the tribunals and, agreed to be a certain percentage. It's usually 5 or 5.5%. And then you say that's the reversion rate. So you say, okay, this flat is going to be worth, let's say, £500,000 in, as it is, with the long freehold. You then discount that cumulatively, so for every single year, and you do it, you work out 1 year and then you do it again with the result for that 1 year. So you discount it by the 5 or the 5.5% until you get to today. And that figure is your reversion rate. So let's call that figure B. So you add the A and the B together, and that essentially is what is normally due to the freeholder. However, there's also a third element, and that third element is called the marriage value. Now, what the flat is worth today in its short lease version, let's say, is £200,000, and what it will be worth in the freehold version, which in my example, I was saying £500,000, there's a difference between the two. So if it's worth £300,000 today as a short lease, and it's worth £500,000 with a long lease, that difference there is £200,000. Now, you then take away your A plus B figure, but let's say that's £10,000. So you're left with £190,000. That £190,000 is called the marriage value. And what happens is, if the lease is shorter than 80 years, you split the marriage value 50-50 between the freeholder and the leaseholder. So £190,000 divided by 2 is £95,000. So you add the £95,000 to your A plus B figure, and those three figures make up the premium that you have to pay to your landlord. That's how it's normally worked out. So why then have we got two so very different figures? Now, the surveyors are then going to negotiate this. They will talk to one another. They'll argue, why their figure is right and not the other party's. And I have all the confidence in the surveyor that I instructed. He is very, very knowledgeable, that he will, get them to agree with him. But actually, he probably won't be able to, because they will then lose face with their clients. And of course, I have the option of pulling out of this, paying costs, probably about £3,000, and then just sit back and wait for the government leasehold reforms to come in. Because if these particular landlords want to stick with their £89,000, my choices are go to tribunal, duke it out there, or sit back and wait. I don't know. Time will tell. I'll probably do an update on this. Not a problem, because there's no pressure to actually do anything with it, in that it was going to be one that was going to be held. So no problems whatsoever on that front. But how did they arrive at their figures? So I've worked all of this back using a calculator that I normally would use myself. And that calculator, it just tells me that they're absolutely wrong. Well, they may be right. They might be wrong. But if they are right, so they've given the flat a value of 365,500, roughly about that, which isn't incorrect. But what they have also done is they've assigned it a relativity value of about 56.5%. Now that's wrong, because the relativity value for the flat is actually about 80%, for this particular flat anyway. So there's no way that they're correct. So we have the purchase price. So the purchase price was 207,500. But what they haven't done is they haven't adjusted that up to take into account the good negotiation skills that went into getting that price, because the value of the flat was a lot more. The value of the flat was about, and I've actually done something on this, but I can't find the figures. I think the value of the flat was about 260 as bought, even though it was obtained, at 107,500. So they would need to adjust that. There's no two ways about that. And once they adjust that, then we're going to be coming to roughly about the £28,000 that my surveyor actually said. So it's so important to get good advice, because you see, when I saw their figures, I wasn't even phased. I just thought, oh well, that's another one that's going to go to tribunal, end of. So it's not, an issue. And also, when I was instructing my surveyor to give me advice on how much the premium was likely to be, we also negotiated that he would go into negotiations with the landlords, in the event that we couldn't agree on the premium, and he would do it on a no win no fee basis. So if we couldn't agree the premium, he wouldn't get paid. And if he was able to negotiate such that we agreed the premium, then I would then pay him £400. So that is a really, really good deal. Anyway, so back to this thing. So this is why it's always so good to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, the whole shebang. So when this flat was bought, it was bought on a standard variable mortgage. No problems whatsoever. Done minimal improvements to it just to update it. It was in a fine state, but very, very, very dated. So left the bathroom as it is, because didn't want to spend £5,000 on that. The kitchen is being remodeled slightly. At the end of that would probably cost about £1,000. The flat has been completely painted. That was £1,100. And my electrician's going to come in. The fuse board is outdated. He will need to change that. So he is going to charge me £300, including materials, to do that, and to also change all the light fittings to bring them, bang up to 2022 standards. And I've already got somebody who says they want to rent it for £1,400 a month. So it's looking very, very, very good. But let's even assume that the freeholder and the other landlords, the intermediate landlords, are correct, and that the premium is going to be £90,000. What will my options be? One, I could put the property into an auction and sell it. Two, I could put it back on the market and sell it and still make a profit. Three, I could literally just pay the money and increase the value of the flat. But do I have £90,000 just sitting around? No. And if I did have £90,000 just sitting around, would I want to put it into this flat? No, because I'd rather use the £90,000 to buy somewhere else. So what might my options be regarding this particular flat? This is on the assumption that I don't want to wait for the government reforms. But again, that may well be something that I might be forced to do. What I could do is I could go and apply for a new mortgage on the basis that when the mortgage completes, I will have another 90 years on the lease. So that is the way that the mortgage would be applied for. That it's a short lease at the moment, but on completion, it will have another 90 years. So if I'm able to get a 75% loan to value mortgage, again, this will be subject to the rents and, valuation and all of that. But let's assume their valuation, or what I think their valuation is correct. That will allow me to borrow £274,125 on the flat. The current mortgage on it is £158,737.50. That will therefore, after that mortgage has been paid off, leave me with £115,387.50. So if I then pay what all these landlords want, which is their £89,879, I will still be left with £25,508.50. Now, okay, there'll be fees to pay and or whatnot, probably about, I don't know. If we do go to tribunal, I'll get a barrister to argue the case. They will probably charge, I don't know, maybe about £1,500. The surveyor's fee, that, his £400 to negotiate, that doesn't extend to tribunal. If we're going to go to tribunal, it will be a different amount, could be about another £1,500, so that's £3,000. But all in all, I'll be able to claw back £20,000 of the deposit paid into the flat. So when the flat was bought, the deposit was 50 odd £1,000. So there will still be a fair chunk in the flat, but the flat itself is absolutely worth it. So these are why, if I'd bought at too high a price, this would not be possible. It would not be possible at all. And I think they're wrong. And this literally just goes to show you what might just be in this deal. Because if, the flat is worth, because even if they're right on the 365,500, they've got to bring my purchase price up, because it's not all about this is how much you paid. You have to look at what it is actually worth. And because the flat was worth more than what I paid for it, they have to use what it's worth and not what I paid. If they're going to use what it's worth with the long lease, stroke the freehold, the freehold value of the flat, they have to use both of them as, in terms of valuations. And it just makes it really interesting. But you can begin to appreciate how complicated these things can be. So it's no good hearing people talk about short leases and jumping in and overpaying in the beginning, because if you overpay, you won't get the benefit of that overpayment, because they will look at the value. How much was it worth when you bought it? If you've overpaid, tough luck. You've made a mistake, and you will still be clobbered with, or you could be clobbered with, a really big premium. Now, this is very unusual because of the number of landlords involved, but it doesn't matter how many landlords are involved. Your premium amount is always going to be the same. What makes it complicated is how you apportion that premium between the number of landlords that you have. So, one just has to be extremely careful. Make sure that you get proper advice. I had legal advice, regarding the structure of the holding, the leasehold. And I had professional surveyor advice as well regarding the amount of the premium. And all of this I actually obtained because I knew it was complicated because of the number of landlords involved. I made sure that I got this advice before I actually exchanged and completed, because I would have walked away if, it had been, ridiculous. And even with the 90,000, even let's say, like I said, if the 90,000 is going to stay, which it won't, it still works. I can still pull out £25,000 of the amount of money that I put in there. So leaving maybe about, £25,000 in there, obviously depending on, mortgage valuations and stuff. But you see, the mortgage valuation shouldn't really differ from the valuations that these surveyors are using, because they're the ones who go out and value for mortgage purposes. So it's going to be fun and games, and I will keep you guys posted. But, I really do appreciate all you regular listeners. And may I just ask, I don't do this often, but may I just ask, that you go to your listening app and rate and review these podcasts. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people do say to me, oh, Patricia, really love your podcasts, really enjoy your podcasts, so much value, but they're not doing the reviews. So the range of the podcast is somewhat limited. I still have, all of you guys, I do appreciate you, and I do love the fact that you keep coming back and listening, and I can see the numbers on my hosting platform, but you're not reviewing them, you're not reviewing the podcasts, so please do that. I don't ask often, but I'm asking now. Anyway, have a nice time, and I will be back next month.